It's fall 2006. I just graduated from college, living in Lincoln, Nebraska, making $10,000 a year. So lunch and dinner, it's pretty much ramen noodles and $5 hot and ready pepperoni pizzas from Little Caesars. And oh, by the way, yeah, my girlfriend and I, we just broke up. So I come home one evening and I get a letter. Check my mailbox, I got a letter from my dad. Enclosed is a check for $5,000. I was over the moon. In the letter, my dad says, give me a call. Give me a call when you get the check, we gotta talk. So I call up my dad. I give him a call and he says, Abhi, you have two options. The first option, you don't deposit the check and you can keep living this entrepreneurial life. The second option, you deposit the check. The $5,000 is yours. You can go to the bank, cash it. But you have to come home and you have to do what we tell you to do. I chose not to deposit the check. I chose, maybe for the first time, to believe in myself. I chose to pursue my lifelong dream of owning my own business, even if I knew I would make a lot of mistakes along the way, even if I knew that I might learn something, a thing or two, even if I knew I would probably suck at it, and even if I knew my parents and I would be at odds. This doesn't need to happen between parents and their children. Instead, well-intended parents can create an open, safe environment to allow for conversations with their children about what their children want to be and who they want to be and what they want to do when they grow up. Even if it means a child might fail a lot in order to get there. Like a lot in order to get there. Listen, there's a cultural bias Indian parents have towards security and status that promotes a more prestigious career path, like engineering, medicine, and law. Guys, I'm a successful Indian American entrepreneur. So together today, I want to use this space and this moment in time to create some change, to offer a perspective to help Indian parents continue to be proactive and to encourage them to be more open-minded. And most importantly, notice the opportunities. Notice the potential that your child shows you beyond that of the traditional path you're accustomed to. This will lead to two things. First, it will lead to more opportunities for Indian Americans to positively impact the world. But secondly, it will also lead to more youth actually stepping into what they truly believe they can do. You see, I'm not your typical first-generation Indian American. For as far back, for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But in my Indian American household, my parents would tell me, Abhi, if you do this, you might fail. You don't want to do that. You're going to fail. Or, wait a minute, who would listen to you and what you have to say anyway? And it wasn't just my parents that didn't agree with my career choices. There would be other members in my community that would say, hey, what you really want is a safe, secure, and comfortable job with a company that you can spend and invest time in for the rest of your life. Oh, and my personal favorite, what kind of a girl would want to marry an unsuccessful entrepreneur? I thought it was pretty. So my parents, both academics, pressed me to pursue college in a degree in a field that was well-respected, it was high-paying, and had really good benefits. And in my case, electrical engineering. Let me be frank here, conversations around starting a business, investing money, or finance rarely occurred in my family, and they still rarely occur in other Indian families. If more Indian parents broke through the narrow and limiting beliefs about success that permeate Indian American culture, two things would happen. First, we would see less judgment and less competitiveness among Indian Americans. In my experience, Indian Americans will base your worth on the cars you drive, the amount of money you make, the watches you wear, the clothes you wear, and whether or not you're succeeding in traditional career fields like engineering, medicine, and law. And, oh, by the way, it's always bragging rights if your kids ace the SATs or ACTs. I got like a 12-10, so that was pretty bad. But if you don't fit this bill, that you're looked down on, and that needs to change. And secondly, what would happen is it would allow for an increased opportunity for Indian Americans to positively change the world. An HSBC global research study found that 51% of Indian parents, 51% of Indian parents ranked the most important goal for their children was to build a successful career, while only 17% rated the most important was to fulfill their children's potential. To understand why this happens, we have to break through the limiting beliefs that prohibit parents from truly championing their child's true potential. And to do this, we have to travel back in time to when my dad grew up in India. You know, in the 1960s and 70s, the mindset around entrepreneurship in India didn't exist. There was no social support, there was no availability of capital, and frankly, what role models did they really have? They didn't have any successful role models of entrepreneurs to be inspired by that the youth could follow. So, my dad, the oldest of 6, he didn't even think about being an entrepreneur. In fact, he had bigger problems, like finding and figuring out how he would not be scolded and regularly scolded by the principal of his school for not having the right shoes or clothes to wear. Needless to say, there was zero conversation in his family about starting a business. That was the mindset of my dad. He needed to figure out a way to crush it academically, which he ended up doing. He pursued his PhD, became a professor emeritus in the United States because they were well paid, looked up to in society, and guess what? They had a very stable lifestyle. So, of course he would want this type of stability for me. I mean, what parent doesn't want all the success for their kid, for their child, but also protect them from the downside risk of having to go through the ups and downs and ins and outs? Of course they want that. But what I wanted for myself versus what my dad wanted for me left us at odds. It left us not communicating and fighting on the phone for years. I didn't feel like coming home for the holidays, and frankly, it led to a lot of unnecessary emotional stress. So when I called my dad and I called my mom and said, hey guys, hey mom and dad, I want to be an entrepreneur and I don't want to cash this $5,000 check, even though that meant so much to me in the moment. I didn't get the words of encouragement I needed. I knew that every single day I was alone. I knew every single day I would look at myself in the mirror, and even if I'd learned some lessons, and even if I'd figured out something amazing and something special, or made some mistakes, who could I talk to? I knew if I called my parents, or if I called anybody else, I'd be judged, branded as a failure, and told to come home and get a real job. After an unsuccessful, failed venture, one night I find myself upstairs in the master bedroom of a home I was flipping in inner city Detroit, with no heat, with no covers, with no bed, no mattress, trying to fall asleep. In that moment, I felt defeated, alone, obviously freezing, but worthless. And I'd never felt this in my entire life. And instead of encouraging and supporting my dreams, my family shut the door to the conversations I needed to have to flourish as an entrepreneur. Here's the reality. Our kids today, they're living in a whole new world. But, you know, as parents, aren't we kind of maybe a little bit like my dad? Where we were taking our generation's of ideas and saying, hey, this is how things are supposed to be. This is exactly how things are supposed to be. Well, that's not the world we live in today. Everything's progressing faster and faster and faster and so faster. The opportunities we have today are uniquely different than the opportunities that our kids have tomorrow. What I think is a good idea 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, kids there are saying, well, hey, I can be on Instagram selling stuffed animals for $100,000 a year. Like, that's something that I can do. That is a legit profession today. At the end of the day, you could be anybody you want to be. And as a child, no matter what opportunity you see in front of yourself, and no matter what you feel like your child should do or shouldn't do, there's a path to success beyond that of the traditional path. So whether you're an Indian parent or an Indian American parent or a parent of any culture or background who's placing your biases onto your kids because that's what you think is right, you should do this or you should do that, there are a couple of things that I suggest, 3 things I suggest. First, notice. Really stop and listen. I want you to pay attention to what your child is expressing interests in, especially when they're teenagers. Do they like art? Do they really want to be an engineer? do they like entrepreneurship? What really matters to them? It is your job to help them answer a couple of questions. What are they good at? What unique abilities do they have? And how they can incorporate that and grow. That's your job as a parent. Second, know that your words matter. Your words are critical. Letting your child know at an early age, super early age, that you believe in them, that their ideas matter, their passions matter to you is critical. Absolutely critical. I want you to share in their joy, but share in their successes and also their failures. Encourage them with your words and really ensure that they feel that you believe in them. You know, if my parents felt this way and shared some of these ideas with me previously when I was, say, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they really instilled some of these concepts of, Abhi, you can do anything you pay attention to. You can really do anything you want in life. Probably would have had a different outcome, especially in my relationship with them when I was going through my growing pains as an entrepreneur. That hits home for me really, really, really hard. And once you see your child's talents and you really understand that and you start to identify what their passions are, that's a signal for you to show up, to step it up, and number 3, get involved. You and your child want the exact same thing. You want the same outcome, which is success. That's a big deal. And whether it be watching a bunch of YouTube videos or going to the library, yep, I said library, I didn't say Google, I said library, grabbing a couple of books or maybe going to Amazon and reading a few, this way you're incorporating the learning experience with your child and letting them know that you're there for them. It would have made a world of difference to me if my parents said, hey, why don't we every other weekend go to the library and read? Maybe we can find a mentor in the community and maybe we can learn together. I probably would not have gotten an electrical engineering degree. I probably would have gone to business school, gotten an MBA, and started a couple of more businesses, probably failed harder, but I think that would have been okay. At the end of the day for me, I was able to overcome some of these setbacks to get to where I am today. I've started 8 businesses, I've sold 5 of them, owned many more. I've hosted 3 radio shows in the Wall Street Business Radio Network. And I can honestly say today, my parents and I have an amazing relationship. And even at 38, they're still very proud of me. I have a deep respect for what Indian parents, Indian American parents, and other parents did to raise their children. They knew what they had to do in that moment because that's what their life experiences told them they should do. And I have a deep level of respect for that. But now we know better. So you remember that $5,000 check? Well, I just found out I'm going to be a dad. And my wife and I have committed ourselves to making a $5,000 investment into a catalyst, into any kind of investment, to be used as a catalyst for this child's future. Whatever he or she decides to do. No strings attached. So stay tuned for the rest of the story. Thank you.